Good morning, everyone. So I am the Reverend William Levwood, affectionately known as Rev Lev. My pronouns are he and him, and I'm the minister here at Accotink Unitarian Universalist Church. And whether you're joining us in person today or online, let's all take a deep breath as we center ourselves for worship. We open and welcome to the ancestral people of this land, acknowledging that our church, like all of Burke, rests on the unceded territory of the Manahoac tribe of the Great Sioux Nation. We seek healing and the realization of justice with the people of this land who live on in their descendants, the present-day members of the Monacan Indian Nation, the Patawomic Indian Tribe of Virginia, and the Piscataway Indian Nation. We honor the ancestors as we move toward healing so that all together shall one day know full justice. And our prelude music from our choir this morning is about Hanukkah, which falls quite late this year. The first day of Hanukkah, or the first night of Hanukkah, is actually the night of Christmas Day, December 25th this year. But we're waiting and we're watching for Hanukkah already.
Who is the child in the window, looking out on cold December, waiting and watching for Hanukkah? Who is the child singing songs of love, singing Hanukkah? Oh, this is Hanukkah's child, the child of wonder, Hanukkah's child, the child of hope, Hanukkah's child, the child in you and me, child in you and me, Hanukkah's child, the child of wonder, Hanukkah's child, the child of hope, Hanukkah's child, the child in you and me. Hanukkah, holiday on the festival of lights, brightly burning on a winter's night. Clap your hands and join the singing, let the family gay. Sing the tale, tell the story, Hanukkah is here. In songs of joy, so clap your hands and join the singing, let the family gay. Ring the cradle, tell the story, Hanukkah is here. Hanukkah,
Christina Watts. My pronouns are she and her, and I'm happy to be your worship associate today. If you aren't new to Accotink, look around. Do you see people who you haven't met or haven't spoken to in a while? These people like you and want to meet you. Help us live up to our mission of being a welcoming and inclusive spiritual home for all by reaching out and making a connection. By visiting this congregation, newcomers are in a transition moment, and people in transitions are more open to new friendships. That means that your new best friend may be here this morning, and this is your chance to get to know them. Whether you're a longtime member or a newcomer or something in between, we encourage you to stay for our social hour, online and in person, immediately after the service. We're so delighted that you decided to join us today. Welcome.
Rise in body or in spirit for our chalice lighting words. You'll see them on their screen. They're part of our mission statement. And we'll say them all together. Together we care in community. Together we grow in spirit. Together we act for justice. So this month our theme is presence. And we've explored this in a variety of ways so far this month. We had a Blue Holiday service at the first of the month on December 1st, emphasizing that the most important thing that a person needs if they're having a hard time in the holidays is the presence, the loving presence of others. Then we had a service last Sunday focused on mental health and our mental health journeys. We had really rich and deep and meaningful reflections shared by some of our members. Again, on the theme that, when you're struggling with your mental health, you need many different things. You might need medication, you might need the support of a psychologist or a psychiatrist, but you always also need just the loving support of your community and the people around you as well. And then this Sunday, we're going to talk about how of all the gifts that are exchanged during this holiday season, the most important gift that we can give, and the one that perhaps is increasingly more challenging to give in today's society when we have so much entertainment and distraction at our fingertips, is the gift of our presence, the gift of really focusing on being together and enjoying each other. Next Sunday, we have a wonderful Yule celebration from Sacred Wheel, our pagan group at our church. And then on Christmas Eve, I invite you all to come for our Christmas Eve service at 4 p.m., a candlelight service that will start at 4 p.m. on Christmas Eve. That's a family-friendly service.
Our time for all ages today is going to be the story I Am Peace, a book of mindfulness by Susan Verde and art by Peter H. Reynolds. There are times when I worry about what might happen next and what happened before. The thoughts in my head are like rushing water, and I feel like a boat with no anchor, being carried away. I give myself a moment. I take a breath. And then I tell myself, it's all right. I feel the ground beneath my feet and steady myself. And start to notice the here and the now. My thoughts begin to settle. My mind begins to clear. I am peace. I can watch my worries gently pop and disappear. I let things go. I can say what I feel inside out loud. I know myself. I can share kindness with others. I make a difference. I can hug a tree and thank it for its beauty and strength. I connect to nature. I can watch the clouds make shapes against the sky. I know wonder. I can taste and smell and touch and hear and see what is all around me. I use my senses. I can feel my breath fill my whole body. I tune in to me. Now the water is still. I have found my anchor, and everything is all right. I don't need to worry about before or after. I am in this moment. I am peace. Now, I share my peace with others and hope that it is carried away to those who need it. And I dream we are peace.
So, I have a really simple message this morning, simple truth, which I mentioned already earlier, that the best gift that we can give at the holidays is our presence and the opportunity to be with those that we love, to take in their presence, to be present to each other, but also to the simple pleasures of life. It's as if the stones and the rivers and the candles and the walls and the floors are also beings. And we can be present to the crackling fire, the calm of the snow or the rain, the sweetness of summer fruits, preserved and made even sweeter, either as jam perhaps, or in a pie, or dried fruit. But when I was thinking about this simple message and why to even talk about it, it just seems like it's a lot harder for me to be present these days. Part of that could just be that I'm older, I'm in my midlife, and I have more responsibilities. You know, I had that Gen X extended adolescence. I was a modern dancer, which is a very meditative practice, professionally after college, so that maybe helped. But I think that's not all it is. And I think it's not just me, that I'm not alone in this. And in fact, rates of addiction of all kinds, as well as anxiety and depression, have all risen over the past 50 years, with a particularly stark increase over the past 20 or even 10 years. Dr. Anna Lemkin, who wrote the book Dopamine Nation, puts it this way in her book. She says, "We've transformed the world from a place of scarcity to a place of overwhelming abundance. Drugs, food, news, gambling, shopping, gaming, texting, sexting, Facebooking, Instagramming, YouTubing, tweeting. The increased numbers, variety, and potencies of highly rewarding stimuli today is staggering. There's just so much pleasure available to us. Our phones, with their constant ability to entice us with an Instagram photo, a Facebook like, a Candy Crush video game at our fingertips, or maybe I should say thumbprints. But not only that, endless streaming of movies and music and TV shows. But not only that, endless supplies of stories to meet any preference imaginable, romance novels, coming-of-age tales, fantasy, science fiction, nonfiction of every kind, memoirs and essays, social science and self-help, nature writing, new philosophy, ancient philosophy. You can read about any religion imaginable, with literally hundreds of books just on subtopics of each religion. As Dr. Lemke points out, Whether it's sugar or shopping, voyeuring or vaping, social media posts or the Washington Post, we all engage in behaviors we wish we didn't, or to an extent, we regret. And this is particularly problematic because of how the pleasure and pain receptors work in our brain. I've shared this before, that they actually share receptors, and the more pleasure that you get, the more the receptor, like a seesaw, the more desensitized it becomes, and the more sensitized the pain side of the seesaw becomes. Though the opposite is also true. The more that we have pain or even discomfort, the more that we're desensitized to pain and sensitized to pleasure. So that those simple pleasures become even more pleasurable. So pleasure actually brings pain, but the converse is also true. Pain brings pleasure. One of my favorite lines in the Quran says, after the hard time comes the easing. And it's repeated. It says again, after the hard time comes the easing. But a better translation of the Arabic gives the essence, the implication that the hard time actually pulls the easefulness. And I think that that is a good illustration of how when we have challenges, when we move towards challenges and discomfort, we actually pull ease and pleasure towards us. Here's Dr. Lemke again. She writes, the phylogenetically uber-ancient neurological machinery for processing pleasure and pain has remained largely intact throughout evolution and across species. It is perfectly adapted for a world of scarcity. Without pleasure, we wouldn't eat, drink, or reproduce. Without pain, we wouldn't protect ourselves from injury and death. But herein lies the problem, she writes. We've transformed the world from a place of scarcity to a place of overwhelming abundance. And we're maladapted for this new world of abundance. Lemke borrows a phrase from Dr. Tom Finucane to describe this reality. Dr. Tom Finucane writes, it's like we are cactus in the rainforest. So this made me think of the 5 heaven and hell realms in some Buddhist thought. So the hell realms are described as the animal realm and the demon realm, and the heavenly realms of the demigods and the gods, and in between those 5 is the human realm. But in this Buddhist cosmology, the heavenly realm is actually another kind of hell realm. I'll say a little bit more about that in a moment. In a hell realm, there's too much pain. We're overwhelmed by it, and our desperate desire to avoid or at least survive the pain, we miss the point of life, from this Buddhist standpoint at least. And in the heavenly realm, it's not where we want to be either. In the heavenly realm, there's too much pleasure and ease, and we're overwhelmed by that pleasure, and in our desperate desire to experience as much pleasure as possible, we miss the point of life. Now, only the, quote, human realm provides the right balance of pleasure and pain to move us towards a meaningful life of care, compassion, and generosity. Now, I think it's important to note, and the way I'm using these realms, and I think you can use them this way in Buddhism as well, is as metaphors for our own human experience. That there certainly are times in our lives or people in society where there's too much pain caused by scarcity due to poverty or other forms of marginalization within the human hell realm, and that too much pleasure caused by overaffluence due to wealth or unearned forms of privilege puts us in a human heavenly realm. I think also, so we have this quote unquote human realm, but actually I think we could look at the Buddhist path as an attempt to focus on enacting that human realm, of seeking that equanimity, that balance between pleasure and pain, both dulling the pain through the calming effect of mindfulness practices and chanting, while simultaneously calming our need for endless dopamine stimulation, which then encourages our awareness of the full spectrum of experience, which includes in every moment both pleasure and pain. So that's a lot of the context we find ourselves in, but how do we work to be more present in this day and age, in this rainforest of overabundance? So Dr. Lemke, she actually uses dopamine as a mnemonic. I'm not going to go through all of it. She talks about collecting data about our behaviors, looking at the objectives for why we do things, but the problems that might come along with some of these behaviors. But then when she gets to A, that's for abstinence, or what she calls a dopamine detox. So if you are having the experience where you're having trouble being present in life and you feel like you're on Facebook too much, or you're binge watching television too much, then you might, or using substances too much, whatever it is, you might consider a dopamine detox. And she stresses that a month is the magic number, which I thought was interesting. How many people are aware of dry January, where people give up alcohol for January? And there's a new one, I forget what it's called, but in February you give up your smartphone for the month. Same idea. Some people even get dumb phones that just have, the things we really want, like GPS and podcasts. So a month, the research shows that 2 weeks doesn't necessarily change those dopamine receptors. You're going to still be in somewhat of a withdrawal. But after a month, it resets your dopamine, and the increased anxiety or depression that might come along with that hunt for dopamine, which again, remember, is desensitizing you to pleasure. That resets, and then you're going to feel a lot different. If you have depression or anxiety, there's a good chance it's going to lift. In fact, they've done this with alcoholics, where the only intervention is not drinking alcohol. Alcoholics who also reported depression, and 80% of the alcoholics reported no symptoms of depression after a month of sobriety. And that holds true for a multitude of dopamine stimulators, that about 1/5 of people have an underlying psychological symptom or need, right, that they need to have addressed. But that means 4 out of 5 of us, the major factor, and for all of us probably, regardless of whether we have an underlying depressive disorder or anxiety disorder, it's not helping that we are in this overstimulation over and over again. So one thing we can do is a dopamine detox. Another thing we can do, I mentioned this earlier, is to move towards discomfort. Think about it like a vaccine, and I think that's important. We're not necessarily moving towards the most painful things in life, but enough discomfort to reset that pleasure-pain receptor. The book mentions cold plunges as one thing that there's research support for, that resets your pleasure-pain receptor, because the cold is painful. I'll share with you all, when I was a chaplain, I did exercise where we thought of the things we really wanted near us at the end of life. We knew we were dying. And then we took them away. We had like 8 categories, and then we took them away. So we had loved ones, and I have to admit, the thing that was there for me, the very last thing I wanted to have, I feel almost ashamed. It wasn't my closest loved ones. It was warmth. I just didn't want to be cold. Although I do enjoy a good cold plunge. Maybe that's why, because I don't like it. So it resets my pleasure pain receptors. Exercise is another good way to reset those pain and pleasure receptors. And surprisingly, truth-telling is another way. So those little moments where maybe you're tempted to tell just a small lie or hide a little something for the sake of making things a little more comfortable, if you tell the truth in those moments, if you move into that discomfort of the fear of rejection, and you counter that by telling the truth, not only does it move you into that place of discomfort, which resets your pleasure pain receptors, but it also connects you with others. Now you're really sharing your true thoughts and feelings, and there's an opportunity to deepen with other people. Which brings me back to this, just the importance of being present with each other. This word presence, we're studying this month because we're studying all year the spiritual practices of our faith tradition. And the practice of presence is mentioned in the value of generosity. That we'll be freely and compassionately open in sharing our resources, our faith, and most importantly, our presence. And this is something I've said before as well, but we heard it in our hymn that we sang earlier, Here we have gathered, when it said, as we give, we gain. As we give, we gain. I'm not even sure that generosity is the right term. I preached a sermon last year that I titled Intergenerosity, because I really think that we have this false image that when we give, we're giving up. When actually what we're doing when we give is we're engaging in the gift exchange of presence. And that when we give and when we receive, we're in that reciprocal dance of mutuality, of interdependence, of generosity and gratitude, which is a different kind of abundance. Maybe a oxytocin, serotonin kind of abundance, which are much more calming to our nervous system. In fact, maybe that can be our goal for this holiday season and even for the new year. Instead of being overstimulated with dopamine, maybe our goal can be to be overstimulated with serotonin and oxytocin, because we're so focused on bonding and connecting and being present for the people in our lives. So may that be so, and may we be among those who make it so. Amen, 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 and blessed be.
Love is little, love is low, love will make our spirit grow. Grow in peace, grow in light, love will do the thing that's right. Love is little, love is low,
As we extinguish our chalice, I invite you to join me now in our community blessing with these words of David Bumbaugh, slightly adapted. This church is dedicated to the proposition that by celebrating our differences and embracing our diversity, we honor the unity that makes us one and binds us forever together in spite of time, death, and the space between the stars. We pause now in silent witness to that unity. Now that we've gathered together in this welcoming and inclusive spiritual home, let us go out into the world nourished, rejuvenated, and inspired to share our values.